Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to install TeamZ's through-the-floor frame connectors on a Fox Body Mustang. Should be a pretty straightforward install. So let's get started, and we'll see how easy it is. And as with all my videos, I will put a link in the description to all parts used. Alright, so starting the process of putting these through-the-floor frame connectors in. So the first thing that I did was cut this centerpiece out about a little inch over from where this thing's going to be. There's just two spot welds on each side, and then I cut it along. Now this is the first side that I'm doing, so I don't know if it would have been easier just to cut this and then eventually cut that out. So I'll learn on this first one and kind of change it on the second one, or do the same process. But so I've got it cut out. I'm kind of just laying the frame connector in so I can trace, but I'm not going to cut this size. I'm going to cut it short and then sneak up on it so I don't have to fill big gaps. I want it to fit really tight in there. If you guys see as well, I've got a level on this. I know it's level because I just installed, if you watched the videos before, the tubular front end. So I know it's level left to right, and I know it's level this way. But use this as a reference to make sure the car is level front to back. And then you could probably put something on the front end like I did if you go back and watch that video, and maybe I'll put a little clip or a picture to show you. But I know the car is level both ways. So right now I've just got this sitting in, and I'm going to start cutting this piece here and start sneaking up on the gap that I need and start working from there. So I'll turn the camera back on when I've got some of that cut out, if I hit any snags, to show you guys where, or what I'm doing. So we'll see you again in a little bit. All right, so I made my initial cut. It's obviously you got a lot more to go, but again, I'll get most of it out of the way and then sneak up on it, and I can just keep putting this in here until it'll go in. This is one of the extra pieces that from the kicker, the long kicker that TeamZ gives you with the kit. So just run into, so now I've got to, once I make it wider and all that, obviously I've got to take, I'm guessing these are reinforcements, for inside of the frame, and then here as well. So I've got to take those out, but I'm going to sneak up on probably about right here and keep sticking this in until it fits flush, and then I can make a line from there. So that's where I'm at. I'll make the cuts and grinds to where I need to, and then I'll turn the camera back on. All right, as you guys can see, I've got it ground back to where that thing fits pretty flush. So now I just need to make sure that I make another line of how wide this is, and now I can kind of finish. I'm still going to cut it just barely short and then grind it, but I at least have where this thing fits in, and I know that's as wide as it needs to be, no wider than that. So that's how I did it. If you watch the TeamZ video that they have online, this is kind of the way they did it. So I'm just following their instructions. So there we go. All right, so I've got it pretty much cut. I still got to do just a little bit of trimming. It's almost all the way down. So what I did now, because you're going to have to cut a little spot right here, because they sit down into this big rib or channel, whatever you want to call it. So I laid it in and I marked it on both sides. So now I pull it back out. I've got to pull it back out a little bit because this car before had on it bolt-on subframe connectors, so they tighten them up really tight, so the inside of the frame right here is a little squished in, but I should be able to kind of knock it in. But I'm going to go ahead and do that right now, and it looks like it fits pretty good. There will be that 1/4 inch or 1/8 inch plate that's right here that these bolt to, but I'm just making sure by setting them in there it's going to have room. And obviously it's the same thing here. I'm going to have to knock it in a little bit more this way, and there'll be that plate that I put against here, but I just need to get it in straight so it sits all the way flush. So that's what I'm going to do next, is cut these out and then try to get it back in and knock it in and get it level. All right, so it's taking a decent amount of work, but under here my frame rails were pretty damaged from years and years of jacking the car up. Whoever had this car before, I mean, I know who had it before, but frame rails were damaged, so I had to kind of set one of these in here and then take this hammer. Be careful because I ended up having to take this out and actually try to do it with a hammer so you don't dent your frame connectors. But it's in. What I'm thinking I'm going to do, I've got to cut this. For some reason they welded in a bolt-in roll cage before, so now I've got to cut this out. But anyways, what I'm thinking I'm going to do, everything's level. These equal the same. What I'm thinking I'm going to do, I'm going to end up having to cut this flush, but I'm going to tack it in right here to here, pull it out so I can weld it all the way underneath, all around this, and then when I go to weld this in, I can probably get my gun pretty much almost all the way under there, but I'd rather have this thing welded all the way around. So it's sitting where I want it. So I'll go ahead and tack that in, pull it out, and then weld it all the way around, and then go to set it back in, and I can cut this flush and go ahead and start tacking this piece in. All right, so I've got this piece fully welded in, and I've got the actual subframe welded in. Now it's time to start tacking in subframe to the actual sheet metal. Be careful, because you have to turn your welder down really low, because the sheet metal's pretty thin. But it's in. I'm going to start tacking it in, and then I'll start on the other side, and then afterwards I'll tell you what I'm going to do with the bars. Alright, so I'm on the driver's side now, and I'll give you guys a little tip that I kind of learned from the passenger side. So you have this like little frame reinforcement that's in here. I think I'll go back and show you a picture of it. Saw it on that first side, but you also have another one right here. Well, they spot weld, if you look, to the inside, you know, of the frame. So I couldn't really get to this side because the transmission's all in the way. So what I did was go from under the car, and you can drill it out that way, but it also will give me, I still got some cleaning up work to do, but it'll give me a spot to actually weld the frame connector on, you know, under here. But you'll have to drill it out that way, because if you cut that piece out and leave these tabs here, the subframe connector won't sit all the way flush. So if you want to, you can drill both out, but I just drilled one out and kind of knocked this one flush. And just make sure, and I don't know, thank God that I'm doing this and took this out. So when I pulled the seat out and pulled the carpet out, I found this. I'm guessing at some point somebody tried to make a repair, and that's what they did. That's god awful. So I'm gonna have to cut that out and weld a new nut there so the studs can go for the seat. So thank God, I mean literally when I pulled the carpet out, pulled the seat out, this thing just fell out. So thank God that I'm doing this, and check that. But as you're going through here, I cut it pretty narrow, and then just ground back until the frame connector sit in there. And then, you know, right here, you know, I just kept setting it down and then kept grinding this piece back. So obviously, like I said, got some finish work to do. But, you know, this will kind of hang you up, so I ground it back a little bit, set it in there more, and then back here I've got to grind these flush. But, and as you can see, my frame rails are pretty damaged. So I'm gonna have to take a hammer and like a dollar or something to knock these completely flat, however I can, so this thing will sit flush. But again, thank God I'm doing this so I can knock these flat. It always looked horrible up underneath the car, and it may not look perfect when I'm done, but at least it won't look so beat up. Anyways, all right, so I've got it in. I've got it sitting at the same level as here. And what I'm gonna do is, just like I did on the other side, I'm gonna tack this in and then take it out and weld all the way underneath it, and then put this back in and then cut it flush here and then weld it in. So on my car, don't judge it off the bottom under here. This one is a little bit closer to the bottom by probably not even an 1/8 inch. It's an 1/8 inch further down than the other side. But again, this car could be just a hair off. I'm doing it based on the same, leveling it out based on the door sill. So that's what I'm gonna do real quick. And then once it's out, I'm gonna clean up all this spot so I can kind of tack it in. But that's where I'm at. So I've got the subframe connectors about 80% welded in. I've got to do some more welding, but they're in. I'm gonna stop kind of where I'm at.
the next piece I'm going to have to tackle is I'm not going to weld the kicker bars in yet because I've got to take this. The car before had a bolt-in roll cage, but whoever installed that decided to weld this plate in instead of bolting it in, and they didn't weld it all the way around, and they didn't paint, so it's got a bunch of rust. So getting it out, obviously, see you got this hole right here, but I've got to cut a big hole, get this out, and I was going to do that anyway because once the cage that I'm doing next gets welded on, I'm going to have to drop it so I can do the tops. So that will be the kicker bars, and everything else will be in the cage portion that I'm doing, but they're in. Hopefully that helps. If you're going to do these, this side was a lot easier because learning from that side took me a while. This frame rail was not as beat up as the other side. It still was a little bit, as you can see from the video, but wasn't as bad. But these through the floor frame connectors are in, and part 2 will be the kickers plus the cage. Hope you guys enjoyed.
All right, so that pretty much does it for the TeamZ through the floor frame connector. So I know I didn't show you guys the kicker bars, how to install those. So I'm gonna wait till I start my cage. But for you guys that aren't doing a cage immediately and you plan to use the TeamZ cage, I'll go ahead and give you the numbers that TeamZ says to set those kickers at. So from the rear bulkhead where the frame connector welds to the center of the rear kicker needs to measure 1 5/8 of an inch. And then from that same rear bulkhead to the middle of the front kicker, it's 48 3/16. Now both of those measurements should hit the center of the kicker. So 1 5/8 for the rear and 48 3/16, again. So part 2 of the frame connector / cage install, I will show you what I'm doing with those kickers and how I'm doing it and why. So I'm going to wait till I get my main hoop in and then put the A-pillar bar in there and make sure that's exactly where I want my kicker. So it could be right on, but I'm going to wait just so I don't have to cut out a lot more sheet metal, and I can just cut out that exact 2 inches, and that'll be perfect for where my kicker is. I'm just trying to save myself some sheet metal work. Who knows, I may have made the job harder. But those are the measurements. So stay around for the second video where I install the cage and I'll show you how to do those. But as with everything, if you like what you see, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.